Hey everyone, it's Chris with Hey a Movie here with a quick note on the episode we've just released. As I'm sure you know, on December 15th, the tragic news of the passing of Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle was breaking news. We actually recorded this episode several weeks ago, but since Mr. Reiner was the director of this film, we thought it was worthwhile to put a little note at the beginning. Obviously, this event is tragic, and the facts of the case are still forthcoming. But we do want to comment that any unexpected loss of life is tragic and is never something God planned or desired. And also, as far as Mr. Reiner goes, thanks for the movies. You've given us a lot.
Mr. Calvin, did God author sin?
You want an answer?
I think I'm entitled to it.
You want a weak God.
I want the God of truth.
I can't handle the truth. I live in a world where I have people imprisoned, if not executed, for daring to disagree with me. I don't want the truth because deep down in places I don't preach about on Sundays, I want a God who decreed my sin. I need a God who decreed my sin.
Did God author sin?
God did freely and unchangeably ordain whatsoever comes to pass, and yet God is not the author of...
Did God author sin?
You're darn right he did!
What a fantastic beginning!
There'll be spectacle, there'll be fantasy, there'll be daring do and stuff like you would never see.
Hey, a movie! Yeah, we're gonna be a movie!
Starring everybody
And me. There'll be heroes bold, there'll be comedy, and a lot of fuss that ends for us real happily. Hey, a movie! We can watch it all develop. Starring everybody!
And me, we'll take the world and set it on its ear.
Come on, join in! We're gonna start right here!
Tonight on Hey a Movie, we review 1992's A Few Good Men, starring Jack Nicholson, Tom Cruise, Demi Moore, Kevin Bacon, and Kiefer Sutherland.
And catastrophe, but it's all in fun. You pay no mind, you wait and see.
Hey, a movie! Is there any way to stop it?
Starring everybody. Everybody, everybody, and me.
Welcome to Hey a Movie, the podcast where two Christians review Hollywood movies and discuss whether or not their spiritual themes line up with biblical truth. I'm Chris Bastito.
And I'm Martin Glynn.
Hey, Martin, we're back at it at Hey a Movie after a 1-week layoff, but hopefully everyone enjoyed that heartwarming video and photo of our dad reading to us as young children. I mean, really takes me back.
It does. You know, few people realize exactly what kind of a man he was and how important he was in our development.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
He was basically a computer program salesman. You know, because
right.
and that was a hard job in the 90s.
Absolutely. And then also dabbled in pool sales. I mean, it's
Well,
how
salesman
mom
now.
put up with them.
I have no idea.
I mean, God, whoever's in charge of these things, please nominate Kerzin Quincito for sainthood. Anyway, tonight on Hey a Movie, we are going to review a film that you and I have spent a lot of time quoting at each other.
Oh, yeah.
And usually
Unlike all the
not
other
lines
movies that we're talking about.
like a lot of the other movies we're talking about, but this one we have a tendency, like we never throw "you can't handle the truth" at each other, but
No.
we are, we did play out "Pa, look, a mailbox" at least twice that I can remember.
I think more often than that. I think we've referred back to that several times. For the sake of making certain kinds of points. And there's the rhetoric of the film is the kind of rhetoric the two of us tend to aspire to have. We don't, because we don't have our words written out before the event happens, which is
By Aaron Sorkin, no less.
By Aaron Sorkin.
But
the thing about Sorkin is that everybody in a Sorkin film kind of talks the same. And people could say, well, that's a problem. Well, it's not really a problem because people talk better in a Sorkin film than they do in real life. Like, I wish everybody talked like they talk in a Sorkin film, and then occasionally break out in song and dance like in a musical. That would be the ideal world for me.
See, I can sing. I could break out in song. So my problem is I can't dance. And
so you just be Walter Matthau. You just be in the background,
basically,
as everyone else is dancing around. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah,
you can still participate in the numbers.
I worry about my two left feet because I only have one left shoe.
Okay, people are going to attribute that to you now, and without knowing that I'm the one that wrote that line. But
that's okay. You get equal billing on the show, and I do most of the work, so whatever.
This is true.
Okay, so Martin, how about a synopsis of this movie?
Right. So Few Good Men is a story where two Marines are court-martialed because of a haircut gone wrong. Their only help is a man with a history of helping condiment dealers.
That's good.
Accurate description of this film. Completely accurate.
It really, except for he was actually helping a condiment purchaser.
Was it a purchaser?
It was a purchaser.
It was. Yeah, but that's funny. That's a problem.
It is funny. Funny, and I did not know, and I only discovered that was a common thing to pass off that particular substance as oregano until that 70s show.
You thought it was just...
Why won't this thing come off? Like, my hand wouldn't be so big if I didn't have to hold this stupid bag.
You're holding the bag? Just let go, you moron.
Fine.
Wow, it's like they're worth in here.
Steven? What's in the bag?
The Packers winning next year's Super Bowl, that's what's in the bag.
Is that what I think it is?
If you mean paprika, yes, sir.
Honey, honey, paprika is red.
If you mean green paprika, yes, sir.
Green paprika?
Hyde, what am I looking for here?
Oregano.
If you mean oregano, yes, sir.
Just a quip and a few good men. To be honest, I think that's what I thought too.
I mean, I was
Very
pretty
innocent.
young. I was pretty young when I first saw this movie. So let's go into history. I'll start just because I first saw this movie at a point in time where I was very into legal fiction. So I don't remember what started me off on that. I do know I love John Grisham as an author, still do. I still go back and read some of his stuff. I still bring in new stuff.
Get on with it.
Yes, get on with it!
And so my mom, I guess, bought this movie when growing up, when we were members of that phenomenon I mentioned. Of the Columbia House Movie Club. So it was one of those movies that just showed up at the house. And at the time, I was young enough that I needed to double check before I was allowed to watch the R-rated movies. My mom said, yeah, you can watch this one. There's nothing. And this
really
is
bad
one of
in
those.
Good Men.
No, this is one of those movies that has an R rating because the topic is not appropriate for children. I mean, yes, there's certainly a bit of language and there's a lot of that sort of thing, but there's also a perfectly good reason to rate a movie R to just say this topic is not for kids.
Yeah, and it isn't for kids. No.
And I remember having a debate having an ongoing discussion with the youth pastor, the longtime youth pastor at our longtime church together about that because he had a hard and fast rule against anything with an R rating. And I say, well, I think that's lacking discernment, first of all, because there are 1,000 reasons why a movie would be rated R that has nothing to do with it being inappropriate for Christians to consume. One great example of that is anything that's a representation of a war.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to accurately represent, I remember seeing the movie Gettysburg with my mom, and that is a pretty darn historically accurate representation of war. And yeah, there's a lot of people dying, and that's a historical event that needs to be told.
And also think a moment about what he's actually saying. He's saying that we ought to put the determination of what is safe for our family off of the people who rate movies. And there are a lot of PG-13 movies or even PG movies that a lot of times I don't think my kids should be watching. And as a parent, you ought to be making these determinations on yourself. I don't trust Hollywood to rate what is appropriate for my kids. And why are we giving the world that power?
Exactly.
It makes no sense to me.
That is another argument I had. There was the coworker I had in my first sales job. You probably remember me coming home, and not that we were roommates or anything,
Yeah,
but
we weren't living together.
I would vent to Martin about that. This guy, because he had a very legalistic attitude, and I don't know what brought this to mind recently, but I was thinking about a conversation where he was trying to convince me to switch my normal, ordinary cable television to this Christian cable package, which, first of all, he missed the point of the main reason I had cable all those years, which is for sports. And his response was, well, look at all these sports channels. I'm like, okay, I don't follow tennis. I don't follow these sports.
Yeah.
Sports, it's like we talked about in the last episode when we were talking about Gnostics. Like there was one giant group of Gnostics. There weren't. There's like hundreds of small pockets that were within this general category. Sports is the same thing. I like certain sports.
Yeah, I'm not going to stop watching the Blue Hats just so that I can pick up a tennis game. It doesn't make any sense. Like,
Right, exactly.
It's like, hey, you shouldn't watch that. That is secular sports. Come over here and watch this curling. No, I'm not going to do that. Why would I do that? I'm an American. I'm not going to watch curling.
No, you see, terrible example because curling is so ridiculous that it's fun. You get the one guy who like hurls the rock with the handle on it,
Why am I
and then his
surrounded
teammates
by
are in
people
front
who
of their.
defend curling? I don't understand. Fine.
Oh,
Fine.
okay.
Clearly I'm
I
missing something.
defend. I watch
Clearly I'm missing
curling.
something.
I watch curling with the same sense of irony that I watched the content that was on ESPN during COVID, like when everyone was in lockdown.
Yeah, okay.
I was channel surfing at one point during COVID, and they were literally broadcasting horse. They had like NBA and WNBA players in their own driveways playing a competitive game of horse on national television.
Oh wait. So not like equestrian racing. You mean
No,
like
not horses.
horse.
The basketball game horse. And like at the bottom of the screen where the scoreboard would be, they would actually have like H versus HO. And like how does that even work? Like how do you make sure the shot's the same distance when you're on two different driveways? And another thing they had was they had pro players playing like Madden. And they'd have like two NFL players facing off as their respective teams playing Madden. They were just so desperate for sports content. Anyway, let's move on. So yeah, history of the movie. I discovered as a kid, loved it, continued to love it. Yet another movie you and I bonded over and quote all the time. How about you? Do you remember how you first discovered this?
I was in college when I first watched A Few Good Men. I didn't watch it with my parents, and I think it was one of those movies where I heard a lot of people talking about it. This is apparently a really famous film. I hadn't seen it before. I had an opportunity to watch. I'm like, sure, I'll watch this. This is just one of the movies that's in. This is just a gap in my movie list. I need to fill this. So I watched it. I'm like, that's a really good movie. I'm glad I watched that. That was the
There's at least do you remember how you got your hands on the movie?
No,
I only asked that. I don't have any memory of this either. Okay, I'm just thinking back because I mentioned before how I built.
I know it wasn't on television because there weren't commercial breaks.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking that question is, I talked about building my movie collection at one point through the phenomenon of the Walmart $5 bin. And that was one of the movies I had. And I think I mentioned Shawshank was another one I had, and that one of my suite mates, half the time when he asked me if he could borrow a movie, he borrowed that. He borrowed A Few Good Men a bunch of times too. So I'm just wondering if, it's entirely possible you said, I've never seen that movie. Oh, okay, we'll fix that. And when I got back to my room,
I totally believe I could have borrowed it from you. It was in that time, and I'm pretty sure I watched it off of either a DVD or maybe even a cassette tape. I have no idea, but I was in college. I really liked it. Probably the thing that makes me think about A Few Good Men the most, though, is that it's probably the first movie, maybe even the only movie, where I eventually did a turnaround in my belief about the hero-villain dynamic. Because like you see a lot of these stuff online about like, oh, the bad guy was the hero all along, and usually it's crud. Usually it's ridiculous.
The Diet Coke Barney Stinson arguments.
Yeah, yeah. But with A Few Good Men, I actually think you have a solid point that I don't think the movie understands the morality of being a soldier properly. And that there was a lot of justification for what it was that Jessup did. Like, I don't think that he's a real villain.
So okay, so let's there's a
I do have some issues with him. I do have some issues with him, and we're going to get into it. So I don't think that
Mhm.
he is innocent, but I have thoughts, and we're going to
Okay.
get into it.
Well, there's a few details about this movie, and I did do a bit of research. I actually went
Mhm.
and watched a channel that I enjoy that is hosted by a real lawyer, and he brought in to do a review on this movie. He does other things, but he does a lot of reviews of legal thrillers and legal movies. Um, he brought in a friend of his who actually served in the JAG Corps, and
Mhm.
so he had actually understood the inner workings of these things. So first
Mhm.
and foremost, let's just mention that A Few Good Men is based on a real event.
Yes, it was.
So it really happened. However,
Well, let's actually dive into that a little bit. Andy Sorkin was basically talking to, I think it was a JAG member or something like that, and who was explaining what it was they were dealing with, and he just found the whole affair fascinating, and then
mhm,
he kind of wrote the script based off of this conversation that he had,
his name
and
is Aaron.
I'm sure he did some research,
His name
but
is
it was
Aaron Sorkin.
I thought it was Andy.
Nope.
Well, I'm stupid. Let's move on. So,
I agree completely. I'm in
yeah,
fact going to put a giant arrow on me that says I'm with stupid or something after this. I do have a few interesting facts on
mhm,
the plot of this film. First of all, there is no such regulation or anything as conduct unbecoming a Marine or a member of any other branch of the service.
I think it can be
And
for an officer, but
yes,
yeah.
there is in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, there is such a charge as conduct unbecoming an officer and a gentleman. So
Mhm.
that only applies to officers. And this gentleman who was a JAG Corps member and served in the military for many years made the comment that um, if that did exist, every single private soldier or equivalent
Yeah.
thereof, every enlisted man would be guilty of this, and most of the non coms. That's one of the reasons they have officers.
Yeah. What kind of people do we usually try to scoop up and turn into soldiers? Generally, the people that are just so nuts. We're just like, hey, you want to go around, shoot people, and break stuff? Fine, let's do it for your country rather than
Mm-hmm.
doing it in the country.
Yep.
And it's, and Marines are
Now,
proud of that. Marines are proud of the fact that it's their job to shoot people and break stuff. That's what they say. You know,
yep.
and
One of my favorite bumper stickers I've ever seen is based on the old FedEx slogan of for FedEx Air of when it absolutely positively has to be delivered overnight.
okay, I see
And
where this is going.
so I once saw a bumper sticker that was spoofing this that said the U.S. Marine Corps when it absolutely positively has to be destroyed overnight.
Overnight, yeah, yeah, yeah. And
So good.
like and I've talked to a lot of military people. Like one of the jobs that I had for a year. I've recently changed what my secondary job is, but one of the jobs that I had for quite some time was driving veterans to the hospital, and I heard stories, like lots of stories. And let me tell you, there was no conduct that they weren't unwilling to pursue. I mean, it's
Right.
just what soldier life is like. And I'm not saying as a Christian pastor that I'm all for it or anything else like that, but let's be fair. These are not people that we are paying to present themselves well in society. That's not their job. Their job is to go out and break stuff and shoot people. And it's dangerous because they're usually shooting people and breaking stuff that's trying to shoot and break them.
Correct.
So it's just like, oh well, how dare you use a cuss word while someone shot at you? Lay off.
$500 screwdrivers is why you didn't vote for the president?
I work for the president, that's a lot.
It's wasteful spending.
No, it's not.
A $400 ashtray? What was that?
A $400 ashtray. It's off the USS Greenville, a nuclear-attack submarine and a likely target for a torpedo. When you get hit with one, you've got enough problems without glass flying into the eyes of the navigator and the officer of the deck. This one's built to break into 3 dull pieces. We lead a slightly different life out there, and it costs a little more money.
Okay, so let's review a few other key details. So this I found fascinating, and it really colors the way I look at the verdict at the end of the film. In a military court-martial, a guilty verdict is reached by a 3/4 majority of the members of the court, which is what jurors are called. There is no official number of members. So it can be anywhere from 6 all the way up to 15. So it has to be a 3/4 majority. If there is not a 3/4 majority, then the verdict is not guilty. There's no such thing as a hung jury in the military.
Which makes sense. I mean, everything is always significantly more strict in the military, and you don't have the kinds of freedoms as a soldier that you do as a citizen. But on the other side of that, there's just the interaction with the government is so much different. It's just an entirely different kind of lifestyle. Really.
Yes, there's a comment in the movie about whoever it was, Private Bell, being placed on barracks restriction, which is a real thing. So it more or less amounts to an adult being grounded. You go to work, you still do all your drilling and all that sort of thing, but then you're confined to the base, you're confined to the barracks, etc. Not being allowed to have food would not be kosher. However, a restricted diet that gives you enough calories but isn't particularly pleasant, which from what I've heard is the military's food isn't all that great to begin with.
No, it's like cafeteria food.
Yeah. But certain places will still use like a bread and water kind of if you're in a submarine or something. And so there's really no way of saying you're on barracks restriction, you can't leave the base. That might be a thing where you're pretty much confined to your bunk when you're not on duty and you're fed even worse food, but you're still given the appropriate amount of calories, etc. So finally, I thought this was interesting. I actually pulled up a chart online of the equivalent ranks, which is interesting in this film because we are dealing with the Marine Corps and the Navy, which are both part of the Department of the Navy, but have completely different ranking structures. So here are the equivalent rankings that I think there's some couple things that are interesting here. The highest ranking officers we see, not knowing who's on the jury, are Colonel Jessup and Colonel Randolph, the judge. So they are both full bird colonels. The second, just below them, are Lieutenant Colonel Markinson in the Marine Corps, and then Commander Stone, the doctor. Those are equivalent ranks. So that's a good rank. So then below the two of them would be Lieutenant Commander Galloway of the Navy, which I guess would make her the equivalent of a major in the Army or the Marine Corps.
And she, of course,
or the Air
outranks
Force.
Kathy.
Yep. Underneath her would be Captain Jack Ross. So Ross outranks Kathy. Never really see that dynamic. And then...
Yeah, but it's there. It's there, though.
So they live in a different world, as the movie did bring
more-
up, and I think that's valid.
It's more how Kathy treats Jack than the other way around. Is the fact that that Kathy, some of the criticisms he levies against Jack, and Jack has it says like, don't rope me in with those people, and that conversation had to do with that kind of dynamic. So it's there. It's just very subtle.
Right. So Kathy, Sam, and Lieutenant Kendrick are all equivalent rank. So because the Navy and then also the Coast Guard have the rank of ensign as the first level of an officer, whereas the Marine Corps, Army, and Air Force have second lieutenant and first lieutenant. And I did some digging and somebody else found out that Kendrick is a first lieutenant, which means, by the way, he's kind of a high rank to just be a platoon commander at that rank, but we'll set that aside. Now, here's the one I found the most intriguing. Corporal Barnes. Corporal Barnes was a full corporal, which is in the U.S. Marine Corps, you start off as a private, then you become a second level enlisted as private first class, then the rank of lance corporal, which is what's called an E3, an enlisted 3, and then full corporal is 4. The Marine Corps is the only one that has the rank of lance corporal. But here's the interesting thing. When Barnes says the reason he did not give Santiago a code red was because Dawson would whoop my butt. Barnes outranked Dawson.
Which is fascinating, yeah.
Right. So Dawson's presence is particular.
And that is the great irony of the movie, that Dawson is being convicted for something that, in terms of his character, he's the least likely person to have actually done it. Yeah.
He is. And it was also mentioned that over half of his recruiting class had made the rank of full corporal, and that Dawson's promotion was held up by getting a report of being below average because he brought Private Bell food. Yep. So
all right. So with that, we should probably get on to the actual questions, and it's worth pointing out that
we should.
Yeah, with this particular movie, where hold on. I think that's DoorDash. Give me a second.
Well, that's super professional of you, ordering DoorDash in the middle of.
Just give me a second. Hey.
You can have a word with your wife about this.
Just ignore him. All right, so it's about. Oh, sure. Okay, yeah, there's not much. Can I pay with card? Sure. All right, here you go.
All right, we're in the middle of a recording, and his pizza just arrived, folks.
I know. No, that's all right. That's all right.
Now he's talking about the weather.
All right.
This is my co-host and best friend of 25 years, folks.
No, dude, I'll talk to you about it. All right, I'll see you later. Yeah, that's my usual
he
guy.
makes friends in the supermarket, so.
Yeah, but that's also my usual guy. So it's no big deal.
Wait, what you got there?
Well, it's just a Mountain Dew.
Mountain Dew?
Mm-hmm.
Martin?
What?
Did you order a Code Red?
What?
Did you order a Code Red?
You're darn tootin' I did! Okay.
All right, let's get into some serious questions.
All right.
Worst cable edit ever, which, by the way,
It doesn't have a lot of direct spiritual content. So a lot of the things we're going to be talking about have to do with the actual law of things. But it's important to note on a spiritual level, ethics has to do with Christianity. And this film, while it doesn't have a lot of things about God and a little bit, but it doesn't have a lot of things about God, it doesn't have a lot of things about the church. It does have a lot of things about ethics, and ethics is absolutely an aspect of Christianity.
And also one terrible example of a Christian.
Right. So that's what a lot. So when we're talking about justice and we're talking about the concept of law here, we're thinking about it in terms of Christian ethics as well as thinking about it in a legal sense.
Let's start with our discussion questions here. Let's talk about the verdict. So,
the following case is not real. The parties involved are 2 podcasters and several fictional characters. Since the defendants are fictional, as are their crimes, the parties have agreed to settle this matter here on Hey, a Movie Court.
We already covered the fact that Dawson and Downey were convicted of a crime that doesn't exist.
Correct. And so therefore that verdict is ridiculous.
Right. And
I personally think that Dawson and Downey did absolutely nothing wrong. Like nothing at all. They followed orders. They were in an environment where orders of that sort were normal. I think the Kathy's point was completely valid. Like, there's no reason. These guys are not the Nazis. There was no reason why they thought that it was going to kill a kid, that they put a cloth in his mouth and cut his hair. I mean, like it's just absolutely ridiculous that they were charged, of any wrongdoing.
Now, I will say this, and this is where Hollywood and the real situation kind of diverge. Aside from the fact that the kid who received the code red survived, the other fact is this happened sometime in the mid-late 80s, not in the early 90s. That matters because Cuba, post-Cold War, was not a forward area pre-9/11. Yes, the Cuban government is not a friendly government. However, during the Cold War, Cuba was a terrier acting ferocious with a Doberman standing behind him to back it up. Once the Cold War ended, they lost their Doberman. And from that point on, Cuba behaved far differently than the rogue nations we deal with in the world today, far different than someone like a Saddam Hussein would have behaved, because Saddam, I just watched a whole kind of docudrama series on Saddam, and the problem was, if Saddam was a dog, he wasn't a terrier, he was a Chihuahua. The problem with Chihuahuas is they're too dumb to know how ridiculous they are.
Yeah.
And how badly they're going to get slaughtered.
And what actually happened with Saddam is that we had a treaty with him. He did not follow through in the treaty, and so therefore we enforced the treaty. I don't know why Bush didn't defend it that way. That was the proper way to defend it. He was dumb in trying to defend it with, hey, we think these weapons are here, and therefore when they weren't there, he had egg on his face. It was a dumb way to defend it. There was a treaty. He violated the treaty. We enforced the treaty. That was completely fine.
Yes, but let's not get into 20-year-old politics.
Yeah.
So Cuba in the early 90s, up until the point where terrorist suspects were being held at Gitmo, was not a forward area. And the video I mentioned earlier, the JAG corpsman made the comment that the the biggest thing people were fighting, soldiers at Gitmo at that period of time would have been fighting, was boredom. There is no chance that the Cuban mirror would have tried to engage. And like I said, Castro in a lot of ways
here's actually a
was.
question, because
So go ahead. What's your question?
So I know the movie came out in the 90s. Does it officially take place in the 90s? Because like I don't remember any actual timestamps within the film.
The only timestamps I'm certain of is that when Caffey is watching a baseball game twice in the film, he's watching games that took place in 1991.
Okay.
And there was always it was always kind of a present day kind of thing. So yes, I mean, this takes
That is
place
true. That's absolutely true.
Post Cold War. And that's one of the beautiful things about military movies, is they're kind of timeless, because at least semi-recent military movies where everyone's wearing a uniform, because you don't get taken out of it by styles or haircuts, things like that. I mean, you go watch When Harry Met Sally, the sheer volume and height of Sally's hair tells you it's the 80s. You don't get that in a military movie. And military uniforms haven't changed since the 90s in any way I would know, as someone who's never served.
Except for the girl in holy cow. You know what? Just move on.
Okay. So let's dive into our discussion question. So the verdict was not guilty of murder, not guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, but they were found guilty of a crime that doesn't exist.
Right.
Okay.
Now, do you think that Jessup and the others would have been guilty of murder or conspiracy to commit murder?
I think they would have been guilty of something. I don't know what, because there was a direct order that the practice, that the commandant of the Marine Corps had handed down, that there was the practice of enlisted men disciplining their own was not to be tolerated by officers. So bare minimum, they failed that. And then,
in my opinion, that is the only crime they actually committed. That and cowardly letting Dawson and Downey take the fall. I think that was an act of cowardice.
That was an act of cowardice. There was also an act of stupidity at the very outset of the film, because if you're an officer in command of a division, which is questionable even in peacetime, and you have a soldier under your command who is collapsing from heat exhaustion, running a few hundred miles or whatever, the military hands out, they hand out medical discharges, like
but
marketing people hand out pens.
He was cleared by the doctor, though, as far as they were concerned. Like, the doctor was the one that really caused the boy's death, and because there was, and by the way, I was slightly wrong. Letting Downey and Dawson take the blame, that's a cover up, and the cover up is illegal as well.
Right. So that's conspiracy.
That is conspiracy to cover up a crime, but I don't think that they are really guilty of murder, and certainly not. They had no intent to commit murder.
Right.
And
which is one question I
have.
have.
Something like felony murder either, because it's just, I don't think that them not following orders would constitute a felony. Though I don't know how felony murder would work within the military either.
I don't either. That begs the question why they didn't include a charge of manslaughter, because manslaughter would be intent to harm but not intent to kill.
Right, and I am somewhat curious about that, though I'm not sure that they even would fall victim to that, because they were trying to discipline And here we get into actual military law, which I do not know. I don't know what would be legal or illegal. But let's go over some of these code reds for a moment. The GI shower was pretty nasty. That one was a nasty idea. After that, we have glue being poured on somebody's hands. We have forcing someone to have a haircut. We did have barracks restriction with Private Bell, which was probably uncomfortable. But none of
I'm
these
fine
things.
with barracks restriction. The denial of food is the problem.
Yeah, the denial of food, but but he was still given enough food to remain healthy.
No, he wasn't given any food.
No, yes, he was. He was given supplements and other kinds of things. He was given
Water and vitamin supplements. In my head, that's okay. That's not the same thing as being given, the most basic bland,
Mm-hmm. But most of these, like perhaps the barracks restriction one, and perhaps the GI shower, but the other ones are just college hazing stuff. They're not.
Yep.
They're not really a big deal. And
so the only one that made sense to me in terms of lining up what the person did with the crime was the one Barnes received because of the glue on his palms. And, that kind of made sense. I guess shaving Santiago's head makes sense to a point because they're saying,
it's
hey,
like putting
this
an
guy...
A on his chest. Well, it's sort of it's like putting an A on his chest. It was marking him out as someone who had betrayed his unit. That's really what's going on there.
So that's somewhat relevant.
Yeah, but it's still these are soldiers. Soldiers should be able to handle this kind of stuff, or else there's no reason why they should be soldiers.
True.
And the biggest problem that I have, all right, is that I started to compare this to what happened with the Catholic Church way back in the 90s, where they were passing priests around when these priests were doing awful, terrible sins. They were abusing their parishioners in horrific ways. And the Catholic Church's reaction to that, I was trying to be subtle so that we didn't have to ding the episode. But still, it was the Catholic Church's reaction was, instead of dismissing these priests, they moved them around so that they were no longer causing the problem where they were. And the way in which the movie portrays this is that Santiago was a person who was a problem. He was a screw up. And that the only solutions, because he had a clean bill of health, according to the doctor, the only solutions to this was to either transfer him or or discipline him. And the transfer would have been basically what the Catholic Church was doing. Hey, this guy's a problem. We're going to take him from being our problem to being somebody else's problem. And that is not healthy for an organization. Like, if you have the problem at your feet, you should either handle that problem or you need to kick him out of the Marines entirely. You don't just simply transfer him to somebody else, which is what Markinson wanted to do, which is what Santiago wanted them to do. That would not have been a good decision.
A better decision overall would have been, okay, great, the doctor says he's fine. Okay, cool. But he's an internist with all this experience. Clearly, the standard physical examination that he gives to every Marine on that base is missing something. He should have been sent for more tests. He should have been, if in fact, in an ideal world, right? Yeah. So, in an ideal world, right? Yeah. So, in that world, because I do believe from what we see of the character of Harold Dawson, that he was telling the truth. There was no poison on the rag. It was a perfectly clean rag. So something else caused this problem. I think, yes, I believe he's a man of honor, and I believe that was valid. I don't doubt him on that story. So something else was medically wrong, which should have been grounds for the doctor to say, okay, I know I gave him an exam and he had a clean bill of health, but clearly something else is going on. So now we need to do our diligence and find out what else may be going on, because it could have been
well,
a
that would have been
condition.
before the rag, because the rag was at the time of his death.
Well, yes, I agree. But I'm saying...
Yeah, he kept falling behind. He was doing the best that he could, and he wasn't succeeding. And yet he's getting this clean bill of health. He is not succeeding at the very basics of what is expected of a soldier. Why isn't this happening? And instead of treating it as something that needs to be investigated, they decided to punish the guy. And on a moral level, I you know what? I'll actually take this as a proper correction. That you're right. It would have been proper for Jessup to have had the level of curiosity as a leader, to have the level of curiosity to investigate the matter on a deeper level, and he didn't do that.
But in your case, the system matched you with 2 other people. It's a rare occurrence, like a double rainbow, or someone on the internet saying, you know what? You've convinced me I was wrong.
So that was a failure of leadership on his part. Absolutely.
And everyone over him should have done that.
Yeah. So
it seems like the only one who did care enough to look into it was his squad leader.
Right. What I really objected to is this idea that the proper thing was sending him somewhere else. That would not have been the proper action.
No. The proper thing would have been finding out if he needed to be medically discharged. And by the way, I'm gonna make the quick comment here about the Catholic Church. Is the solution to their problem in that particular area would be pretty easy to drum out. Not so much that you're not going to still have abuse of power in that situation, but that sort of abuse of power is far less likely in Eastern Orthodox and Protestant churches, because you don't have people with unnatural urges trying to escape into the clergy and say, I
don't buy this argument. Pedophiles generally go where there's access. So you find them in the schools. They do show up in churches, in Protestant churches. They do show up in Eastern Orthodox churches.
Well, I know that's true.
In like Boy Scout troops, they go where there's access. I think that
I'm just saying,
yeah,
that's true.
Hey
everyone, it's Chris with Hey a Movie. I just wanted to record a quick drop-in, something I get to do because I edit these videos, and clarify the point I was making in our recording that you were just watching. I want to draw a distinction. When I talk about someone escaping into the cloth, I'm not talking about someone who is already a serial offender and who is seeking actively to fulfill a sinful desire. Rather, I'm talking about the kind of person who has sinful temptation but has never actually acted upon it, and finds the temptation to be so strong that they take the less than wise course of action to attempt to completely eliminate that type of desire by saying, well, I'll just be celibate and I will shut down all of those desires. The proper God-given outlet for those desires is marriage. I'm not saying that to question anyone who feels that God has called them to celibacy, but I do want to say that for the majority of humanity, we were designed to get married. And the desires we're talking about here are from God. They're just meant to be focused on one person in a covenant marriage. I hope that explanation makes sense, because I'm not talking about predators go where there's access. That's somebody who's already crossed the line from temptation into sin to seeking sin. I'm talking about somebody who enters the priesthood with the intention of shutting down the temptation by shutting down the desires entirely. So I hope that clarification makes sense. Now I'm going to put you back to the show.
The real problem with the Catholic Church was not the fact that pedophiles exist. The real problem was that when they showed up, they did not come down on them and defrock them. That was the scandal.
I agree. I'm pointing out that cutting off access to the appropriate outlet of marriage for such things can exacerbate the problem. If you are an adult and do not have the appropriate access to get married and share in the proper use of marital intimacy, or the proper exercise of marital intimacy, you're going to fall victim to temptation easier. That's all I'm saying.
As a married pastor, I'm not going to really defend the Catholic Church too much on this, because I am.
Well, you know what?
Catholic.
I'm just going to tell you the only reason I brought that up is I think we need to take a little pause here, and I think we need to scold Augustine again, because
that's fair.
So let's just pause and scold Augustine. No, that's a bad Augustine. That's a naughty, naughty Augustine. No, don't do that again. Okay, that felt good.
All right. I feel cleansed.
Since I think we agree the verdict was not correct. I think the verdict was, if you take away the crime that doesn't exist,
and you switch murder to manslaughter.
Well,
I think you have convinced me of the manslaughter thing, because they didn't do their due diligence in
to the officers, you mean, not to Dawson and Downey.
Yeah, correct.
So not guilty for Dawson and Downey, I think, is correct. The dishonorable discharge is not correct. Let's just put a bow on this, though. So what does justice really look like in this situation?
Mm-hmm. And so, I am not a deontologist. So let's actually throw out some words here. There are 4 different schools, or 4 different broad categories of ethics. You have your subjectivists, that would include relativists and nihilists, people who believe that morality is a human invention of some way, shape, or form. There's different categories of them, but then you have your objectivists, and there's 3 types of objectivists. You have your deontologists, which is a really fun word to say, but no one knows what it means. A deontologist is someone who thinks that morality is based off of rules and duties. So there is something that gives you a sense of rules, and you have to follow those rules. So Confucianism would be an example of a deontology, or saying that ancient Jews following the laws of the Torah, or you have Islam. Islam is very deontological. Then you have consequentialism, which is where you get your hedonists, so where you get your utilitarians. This is where most atheists really are. And they are the people who think that morality is only defined by consequences of actions. Everyone agrees that consequences of actions are relevant to morality, but consequentialists argue that that's all that's relevant to morality. And there are certain consequences you want, and anything that leads towards those consequences are good. What leads away from those consequences are bad. And then you have, finally, virtue ethics. And I save that one for last because that's what I believe. And I believe that because that's what Jesus taught on the Sermon on the Mount. And virtue ethics is the belief that morality is based off of character. You develop and strengthen your own character, and then how you generally express yourself is what it is that actually makes something moral or immoral. It is much more attuned to intent. It is much more attuned to practice over time. That and
This episode of Hey a Movie is brought to you by oregano. This delicious member of the mint family is perfect for adding flavor to tomato-based dishes and is also a little-known solution to air sickness. Oregano is another fine product of Yahweh Triunity.
that things like the law are your teachers. They teach you how to become a moral character, but the goal is developing a moral character, not simply following the rules.
And Aristotle, one of the few things I managed to keep in my head from Aristotle, because Aristotle reads like a dryer manual.
A really well-written dryer manual, though. You know, I mean, let's face it. I mean, he didn't know how to write.
He did know how to write. He just didn't. He made excellent arguments, and I've said this before. Jacob Arminius had the same problem. Brilliant arguments, just so dry, so boring that it's really hard. I once or twice, as an Arminian,
Calvin and everyone writing at that time, yeah.
Calvin could write. Calvin could write a little bit, but thank God for Arminianism, for John Wesley, who could both make the point and make it not stink.
Well, because he was a preacher.
He was a preacher, and he was a tremendous rhetorician. But anyway, Aristotle compared virtue to playing the flute, that through more and more use of the particular skill, you can in fact become more virtuous. And I do think that is a good analogy. And then certainly how sanctification works in the Christian world is you are sanctified by responding to God. Which is another point we're going to disagree with Calvinism on and be mad about, is that's part of the father to child relationship with God, is that he is guiding you to making better decisions and also to doing what is right.
And also the mysterious union with Christ that is empowered by the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, that when the Spirit comes inside of you and he changes your character from the inside out, and there isn't this idea in Arminianism that if you screw up today, then you're damned because you just lost your morale. You just lost your salvation. Like I dropped it on the floor on my way into the house. Something. Yeah, that's not Arminian thinking, because Arminian thinking is that everything is grounded in relationships, and it's my sense of morality is based off of my relationship with God, trying to make God proud of me, and that I am a project that God is working on, and I'm getting better or I'm getting worse, but it is a continual project that I am participating in. There isn't this sense of like, oh, I'm saved by my good works. No, because my works aren't good yet. We're working on that. Like God is currently working on that, trying to improve me. I don't have the good works yet. But that also means that if I mess up, that doesn't mean I'm like gone forever either, because we're not deontological. We're not deontological. I don't know if virtue ethics goes with Arminianism, but most Arminians I know are virtue ethics. I know Craig isn't. William Lane Craig is a deontologist, and he is, I think, an Arminian. So it's
someone needs to sit that man down and help him to understand how Arminius and Molina were, as best I can tell, investigating the concept of middle knowledge separately, but arriving at the same conclusions.
Right.
He says
that sociologically he is an Arminian. Like he holds to a corporate election view of salvation. He just holds to a Molinist view of providence. But Arminianism isn't really committed
Jacob Arminius.
to it. Yeah. So like Arminianism isn't committed to a particular view of providence. We're just committed to at least the existence of libertarian free will. But exactly what theory of providence you had,
Whatever.
that's kind of up
Yeah,
in the air.
Molinism is not a soteriological system. It is
It's
not a
not, no.
theological system. And that's not an insult, because I am, as Tim Stratton would say, a mere Molinist in that, yeah, of course I believe God knows all possible outcomes. Duh.
Yeah.
Of course he does. How he knows it, I'm not willing to commit to. The theory I'm currently, as I like to say, trying on like a pair of pants, I'm kind of testing out and praying out the idea that God just simply knows me that well. That he doesn't need to see the future. But I'm not going to. I neither committed to that, nor do I intend to commit to anything on that, because I just don't have enough data.
Yeah, and I'm not a Molinist because I'm not an A theorist. I don't hold to an A theory of time. I hold to a B theory of time. But I'm very sympathetic. But if I was ever convinced of an A theory of time, I would that day become a Molinist.
I think right. So there's another point you made, and I was going to ask the question, but then your description of virtue ethics answered the question of where the principle of moral particularism would come in, where the particular circumstances affect whether or not it is moral to do a particular thing. If you take a strict, Immanuel Kant, for example, a strict Kantian philosophy would say it is never acceptable to go back on your word. But let's say I give my next door neighbor my word that I will help him set up his modem tomorrow. And then between now and then my child gets rushed to the emergency room tomorrow. A strict Kantian interpretation would say I'm still obligated to go help the neighbor set up his modem. More particularists would say, well, in this particular situation, it's far more important for me to be with my child.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly where Kant lies in that 4 categories that I brought up.
I don't know either.
I don't. Yeah, I don't. But most of the time, if you have an absolutist view of rules, that probably means you're a deontologist.
Right. And that's where you come to the idea that it is sinful on a Christian worldview to lie in general. However, the old analogy of, the Nazis knocking at your door, are you hiding Jews in there? Nope.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Frank family's in the attic. And of course you lie about that, because in that particular, there's a higher standard there. Another good example would be Christians are called to obey the law unless that law, the law of man, contradicts the law of God. In Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail, he wrote to Christian pastors, and he said, the fact that the state of Mississippi, the state of Alabama says segregation is right and is acceptable and good is irrelevant. And he believed he actually had the duty to disobey that law because there was a law above the law, that God created all men equal. And therefore, segregation was sinful. To follow that law would therefore be sinful. And I agree with that completely.
But it takes a very mature mind to operate in a virtue ethics paradigm, which is why that's not where God starts. God actually starts with a deontological paradigm, because that's really where you start with children. Children, you don't tell them, let's explore the concept of what is or like good reasons to walk out into the road and bad reasons to walk out in the road, and consider the various. No, like, don't walk into the road unless I'm holding your hand. Just don't. I'm going to give you that rule because you're not mature enough to be able to understand the dynamics involved of making the decision on your own. Just don't do it unless you have my permission. Don't pet a dog unless you have the owner's permission. Why? Well, I mean, as an adult, I don't obey that rule perfectly, but that's because I have enough experience with dogs that I know, like, okay, that dog's clearly friendly. But
Right.
but as a
I
child,
have that experience regularly where I go and say hi to someone's dog, and I try to ask, but when people
it
start,
still is best practice.
but still, I mean, I have an additional rule with my kids that I pet the dog first.
Mm-hmm.
Because if something's going to happen, it's going to happen to me, not them.
Yeah.
But also, I have this experience regularly when somebody has a young dog who's very excitable. I can tell from my years of experience with dogs, this is a friendly dog, but the dog's jumping up and wants to say hi to me and whatever. And the owners apologize. And I say, oh, you don't need to worry about that.
You don't need to worry about that. Like, I enjoy this.
Yeah.
This is fine. But I don't
this
want,
is great.
But I don't want the dog jumping up on my kid because the dog will tackle my kid to the ground and hurt him. So it is that there is a general view of ethics. Now, the law is the law and ethics, are they the same thing? And the answer is clearly no. There are some things that are ethically wrong that shouldn't be illegal, and there are some things that are ethically right that shouldn't be made mandatory by the law. However, the idea that laws and morality are separate things is false. The laws that are passed should be moral laws. You should not. There are laws that are evil laws to pass, and there are laws that I do think a government can be morally compelled to pass as well. I think it is immoral if a government does not make murder illegal. That is an immoral government that doesn't make that illegal. Likewise, I think that it is a travesty that in England a man can be arrested for praying in his own home because his home happens to be close to an abortion clinic. That is a travesty of justice. And I don't care whether or not it's legal. And biblically, we know this is true because we have examples of like on that.
And there were limits on the monarchy of Israel still because they were still held to God's law.
And the other thing is that, as I said before, it takes a mature mind to live in a virtue ethics framework. Most people don't. Most people, they naturally are inclined towards a deontological way of viewing things, which means even though it's true that the law and morality aren't the same thing, a lot of people base morality off of the law. And there is something instructional about the law. So like when we legalize marijuana, suddenly there are a lot more people that are buying marijuana because now they think it's okay. And I understand, but part of that is that there is in fact some duty, I think, to teach the people what is right and wrong through legislation at times. It's a complicated relationship. It is a complicated relationship. It isn't straightforward. And I think that it is simplifying things to say, well, they're just separate things. They're not separate, but they're also not the same. There's a good deal of overlap between the two of them. And you can tell, and you can tell by that comment that I'm not a libertarian. I'm a federalist, but I'm not a libertarian.
I am pretty libertarian on certain things because I think there are areas that the government just doesn't get to tell me.
I'm a federalist, so on a federal level, I'm pretty libertarian. But when it comes on a local level or a state level, I'm less so. The more local you are, the less libertarian I am.
And yes, I'm okay with that too. My problem with certain aspects is, so for example, with marijuana, it is I'm fine with an adult making the choice to use it. May it damage your body? Yes. As long as you're not damaging my body with it, then there's a point where you have to draw the line somewhere else. The government can say, I can't do this. Ow. That was stupid to do. I did it on purpose for a reason.
Sure you did.
And I don't normally walk around whacking myself in the head with my phone, but
Sure you don't.
The government doesn't get to tell me how large of a soda I'm allowed to drink. That's none of their darn business. And there are certain solutions that I feel are best to particular problems that, when the whole, whatever the case is that legalized gay marriage, which it's not marriage, but
No.
I also don't think a heterosexual couple who is not reckoning God as the third leg of the stool in a covenant of marriage, I don't think that's marriage either.
So like marriage itself is much more of it's actually a religious institution. I actually think that Martin Luther was wrong for reducing the sacrament. I'm more Baptist, I think, in terms of ordinances, but I do think that Martin Luther was wrong for reducing the sacraments down to 2. He should have reduced it down to 3.
Yes.
The third one being marriage.
Now, the point of me saying this is to say I don't think any government anywhere should issue a certificate stamped marriage to any couple. I'm fine with, I'm not saying get rid of the legal document, because I do think there's value in the legal document as far as, whatever I own in the state I live in. It doesn't matter that both of our vehicles are registered in my name. It does not matter. It still equally belongs to my wife.
Mm-hmm.
By law, it equally belongs to her. Nothing I own belongs to only me in this world. I don't care if it's a pair of socks. Legally, they are equally the property of my wife as they are mine, because we are married. And I'm great with that. I am totally great with that. I think that, and the fact that there are certain benefits that but it should be a entirely separate thing from what Martin stood up as my witness for, as my best man, and the covenant with God. If marriage was outlawed tomorrow, I would not change the way I live my life.
Yeah, Chris and I, for those who don't know, Chris and I have long had the stance that we do think that there should be a distinction between marriage and civil unions, where civil unions are basically individual mergers that are done by the government, and marriages are specifically done by religious figures.
Exactly.
That if it's not, and anything done by the justice of the peace would be a civil union and not a marriage.
And that's even if it's a man and a woman.
Yeah. And yeah, that's even if it's a man and woman. And also you can have civil unions that have nothing to do with romantic attraction at all, like Matthew and I think her name was Matilda in not Matilda, Melinda in Anne of Green Gables. They're brother and sister and they're living together, and they shared mutual property. That could be a union, There's nothing romantic going on there, but having that merger of property, and that's all the government really cares about. So fine, let's have that be a thing, and then the government stays out of the religious question of marriage.
Exactly, and we just
that has
say,
long been Chris and I's position on that.
Yes, so I'm glad we got to air that particular detail out.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, since that is my role, is to make sure things like that get aired out.
Well, hold on a second. What do you mean by air? What does that mean?
Oh, that's the Armenian internet resistance.
You're a splitter. The people, what is right and wrong through legislation at times. It's a complicated relationship. It is a complicated
Yes.
relationship. It isn't straightforward. And I think that it is simplifying things to say, well, they're just separate things. They're not separate, but they're also not the same. There's a good deal of overlap between the two of them.
Yes.
And you can tell, and you can tell by that comment that I'm not a libertarian. I'm a federalist, but I'm not a libertarian.
I am pretty libertarian on certain things because I think there are areas that the government just doesn't get to tell me.
I'm a federalist, so on a federal level, I'm pretty libertarian. But when it comes on a local level or a state level, I'm less so. The more local you are, the less libertarian I am.
And yes, I'm okay with that too. My problem with certain aspects is, so for example, with marijuana, I'm fine with an adult making the choice to use it. May it damage your body? Yes. As long as you're not damaging my body with it, then there's a point where you have to draw the line somewhere else. The government can say, I can't do this. Ow. That was stupid to do. I did it on purpose for a reason.
Sure you did.
And I don't normally walk around whacking myself in the head with my phone. But
sure you don't.
The government doesn't get to tell me how large of a soda I'm allowed to drink. That's none of their darn business. And there are certain solutions that I feel are best to particular problems that, when the whole, whatever the case is that legalized gay marriage, which it's not marriage, but I also don't think a heterosexual couple who is not reckoning God as the third leg of the stool in a covenant of marriage, I don't think that's marriage either.
So like marriage itself is much more of it's actually a religious institution. I actually think that Martin Luther was wrong for reducing the sacrament. I'm more Baptist, I think, in terms of ordinances, but I do think that Martin Luther was wrong for reducing the sacraments down to 2. He should have reduced it down to 3.
Yes.
The third one being marriage.
Now, the point of me saying this is to say I don't think any government anywhere should issue a certificate stamped marriage to any couple. I'm fine with, I'm not saying get rid of the legal document, because I do think there's value in the legal document as far as, whatever I own in the state I live in. It doesn't matter that both of our vehicles are registered in my name. It does not matter. It still equally belongs to my wife.
Mm-hmm.
By law, it equally belongs to her. Nothing I own belongs to only me in this world. I don't care if it's a pair of socks. Legally, they are equally the property of my wife as they are mine, because we are married. And I'm great with that. I am totally great with that. I think that, and the fact that there are certain benefits that if you, but it should be a entirely separate thing from what Martin stood up as my witness for, as my best man, and the covenant with God. If marriage was outlawed tomorrow, I would not change the way I live my life.
Yeah, Chris and I, for those who don't know, Chris and I have long had the stance that we do think that there should be a distinction between marriage and civil unions, where civil unions are basically individual mergers that are done by the government, and marriages are specifically done by religious figures.
Exactly.
So that, and that if it's not, and anything done by the justice of the peace would be a civil union and not a marriage.
And that's even
that
if it's a man and a woman.
Yeah, and yeah, that's even if it's a man and woman. And also, you can have civil unions that have nothing to do with romantic attraction at all, like Matthew and I think her name was Matilda in not Matilda, Melinda in Anne of Green Gables. They're brother and sister, and they're living together, and they shared mutual property. That could be a union,
Yeah.
There's nothing romantic going on there, but it's having that merger of property, and that's all the government really cares about. So fine, let's have that be a thing, and then the government stays out of the religious question of marriage.
Exactly. And we
That
just
has
say,
long been
hey,
Chris and Mai's position on that.
yes. So I'm glad we got to air that particular detail out. So yeah. Since that is my role, is to make sure things like that get aired out.
Well, hold on a second. What do you mean by air? What does that mean?
Oh, that's the Armenian internet resistance.
You're a splitter.
Okay. So let's cover, just because we're getting a little long now, I do want to cover a couple of quick points that don't require a great deal of discussion. So Jessup admitted that he ordered the code red. And he didn't just say he suggested it, he ordered it. We don't see that exchange. When did it happen? We kind of do, kind of don't. I assume it happened when he had lunch with Kendrick at the Officers Club.
Yeah, I mean, he said we're going to go over some ideas. That's when he ordered it.
Yep. So here's my follow-up question.
I actually find it relatively clear.
When can Kendrick use the same defense that Dawson and Downey use, or is he held to a higher standard because he's an officer?
Well, yeah, I mean, he can be accused of conduct unbecoming an officer. He knows what the laws, what the orders were from higher up, and he was involved in the cover-up, and he lied under oath.
Yes.
None of those things apply. And so, yeah, I think he'll be held to a higher standard.
And it's interesting to me, the view of the hierarchy of a military division. Kendrick even says that the only authorities he recognizes are his commanding officer, Colonel Jessup, and the Lord. You really ought to be recognizing the executive officer, the court, the officers over your commanding officer, because he's not the president of the United States.
Did he mention the Constitution?
What?
I don't think he mentioned the Constitution, did he?
He didn't. And the authority of his commanding officer comes down from the commander-in-chief. Not only that, he's a first lieutenant in command of a platoon. That platoon is a member of a company. And that company is a member of a regiment. That's a member of a brigade that is then a member of the division. So he's got a company commander. He's the company commander. So then he would be subject to the commander and executive officer of the company. Or no, he would be right. No, he was the platoon commander. So he has a company commander. He has a captain over him. The captain is directly reports to the executive officer and the commander of the regiment. The regiment commander has a similar hierarchy to the brigade command.
What was Markinson's position in all that?
He was the executive officer. He was the number 2 man in the division.
Number 2 man in the division. Okay. So, and I think any real Marine would have a much more sophisticated, especially an officer, would have a much more sophisticated understanding of the hierarchy, because hierarchy of command is something that is drilled into you.
Right.
And
frankly, the fact that Kendrick is having a direct meeting with the colonel is unlikely as a platoon commander. I mean, in the situation, maybe he gets called in as the first level officer over.
who like would have actually been interacted with Santiago, yeah.
Yes, so
But the thing, but like there is a classic thing in terms of Navy that whenever you are on a ship in the Navy, the highest rank on that ship when it's deployed is the captain. It does not matter if there's an admiral on board. It does not matter if there is someone who outranks the captain while on land. While on that ship, while deployed, the captain is the head of the ship, is the highest command. Nothing like that is true in Gitmo. That does not apply.
especially during peacetime and not a
Yeah,
forward
and
area.
there's no way a platoon commander would not be aware of that. He would, he wouldn't just say like, "Well, the guy immediately above me, he's the only one that gives me the orders. He's the only one that I listen to. If he gives me an order, that's what I do." No, that's not how you think. Now, it's true that the Marines on the ground probably would have very little conception of the order that's being given to the division commander. It's very possible that Dawson and Downey had no idea that code reds were illegal.
Right.
Very, very good chance.
Absolutely. And
but
yeah, the guy they reported to told them to do it, so they did it. Yeah, that's valid.
But none of them would actually think that if an order was given on high not to give code reds, and then Jessup tells me to do a code red, that I should obey Jessup over the higher ups in Washington.
Well, then their solution, and every rank in the military has the right to ask to have the orders given to them in writing.
Yes. Yep.
And that you still have to follow the order. But if you ask for the order in writing, you are not culpable for following that order.
Right.
And
this whole business that the Democrats have been doing lately, and because like we do film these beforehand, and the Democrats have recently come out with all these videos saying, you know, if you're in the military, you can disobey an illegal order.
No, you can't.
Under certain kinds of stipulations, you can challenge orders that you think are illegal, but it's not like you can just go around and go, nope, I don't think that's legal. It doesn't work. Does not work that way. It does not work that way in the military. And orders are a big deal. Orders are a big deal. You know, and this is true in the spiritual warfare as well, right? So one thing that I think us as Americans we fail to appreciate when it comes to Christianity is that we are involved in spiritual war. And if you think that the entire point of going to church on Sunday is to just, hey, they're teaching me how to be a nice guy, and isn't that great? And I'm meeting some people on Sunday, and this is great. No. There's war that is going on, which means that it is actually important to have a sense of hierarchy within the church as well. As a pastor, I have a presbyter who's over me, who I appeal to and I go to when I am unsure of things. And if he came to me and told me that the way that I was running the church was wrong, I would listen to him. I would, our tradition is very congregationalist, so I am a bit more like a captain on a ship in that sense. But every captain on a ship knows that if the admiral says something while they're deployed, sure, everyone on that ship is going to obey me. But when we get back to the land, I'm going to have to deal with the fact that I'm in trouble, right? So even as a pastor, I am under authority, and some people take this too far. You know, like like everything where just everything has to be perfectly ordered. No, we're not a military unit. That's also true, but I do take hierarchy very seriously, and there is also discipline that occurs within a church context, which is there to keep you safe from the demonic warfare that's going on in the world.
Absolutely.
There is more
And
going on here than just happy-go-lucky Sunday worship.
right.
There's a lot more.
And one of the things I always loved about our longtime pastor together was that he called himself, and the word pastor comes from, I forget which language, but it comes from the word shepherd in Greek or Latin or something. He always referred to him. He always referred to himself as an under shepherd, as a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
In that, and in his case, he was saying that in deference to the fact that ultimately our shepherd is Christ, and in the denomination he still serves with, as far as I know,
I've actually taken to thinking of myself as a bellwether. Do you know what a bellwether is?
I not at the moment, but it's also
It
late.
is. It is a sheep in the flock that the other sheep follow, and the shepherd tells the bellwether which way to go, and the rest of the sheep follow after that one. And
I would say a better description would be a sheepdog.
except what I'm basically saying is that I'm still a sheep. I'm still the same kind of thing as everybody else. It's just that I'm the one who's in the lead. That's why I like that analogy.
That is a fair analogy. I like that.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, I think we're at that point now. So let's give our ratings on this movie. So once again, I'm going to remind you that we are not doing quarter stars. It's too big of a pain. So 1 to 5 stars. How do you rate A Few Good Men?
I mean, it is a very enjoyable film. I think it's a very good film. The directing is fabulous. The script is just the dialogue of the script is absolutely on point. The acting is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. However, I think that there was a poverty of research in terms of the subject matter, which in this particular film is incredibly important. And therefore, since I can't use quarter stars, I'll give it 3 5/8.
You can learn how to edit.
3.5. 3.5.
Okay. I had a similar problem with it. I do think it is a absolutely outstanding film. The lack of realism kind of got to me where, there is no such thing as conduct on becoming a Marine, and the lack of understanding of the hierarchy and all of those things. I'm not going to ding it quite as much as Martin, though. I'm going to give it 4 stars because I think it is that solid of a film. It is so rewatchable. It is so quotable that I think, I'm going to give it 4 stars. So now the interesting one, and I'm still kind of rolling through it in my own head, so I'm interested to see what you say. In terms of, the spiritual theme, specifically of justice, how does it line up with biblical justice?
Oh, okay. So you just completely reframed it. You know what? You go first because I think I'm going to have to think differently than what I was originally thinking.
Okay. I think the number one issue in justice is that Dawson and Downey were found guilty of anything. Because in that world, in what the military needs to be, they should not have been found guilty of anything. And so for that, I have to, I have to take something off. Now, the fact that they were found not guilty of murder, they were found not guilty of conspiracy because they were following orders, and that they are enlisted, and Dawson is the lowest level non-com. I mean, I think other than the conduct unbecoming charge, I think, justice was served. They should have been returned to their unit, and arguably, Dawson's previous proficiency in conduct should have been corrected. And if appropriate, he should have been raised in rank to full corporal. Clearly, he has tremendous intelligence, frankly, he should have been sent off to OTS for officer training school. He's that's what the military's looking for.
Yeah.
Somebody dropped the ball that he wasn't sent off to be trained to be an officer. So setting aside the poor charge, I will give it a pretty strong rating on biblical accuracy of justice. I'll give it a 3.5. I think you have to cross a pretty high threshold to even get to a 4, in my opinion, on that. But I'll give it 3.5 stars for accurately portraying what justice looks like in that particular situation. Now, I would not consider that judgment correct in civil society, in secular, or not secular, but in civilian society. But in the military, I think that judgment was correct, except for they should have been returned to their unit.
So the way I go about these things is when it comes to this, I start with 3 stars, and then I add points for biblical accuracy, and I take away points for direct biblical inaccuracy. And a film that doesn't really approach biblical topics at all will end up being a 3. So that's just a default setting for me. I feel that when it comes to the subject of justice, I find that what the movie does really is it discusses these things, but it doesn't really come down on what was right or wrong too much. Like, what was the right thing for them to do? What was the wrong thing for them to do? And the movie doesn't really know, and it doesn't seem to claim to know, other than that Downey and Dawson need to be defended, and that Jessup was needed to be at least exposed for letting these two take the fall for him. But in terms of what was the right thing to do there, I think it just opens the question and leaves us to talk about it. And I think a film that gets you talking but doesn't come down on one side or the other too much, I think would end up getting a 3. It ends up getting the default position because it doesn't take a strong stance. The only thing that I could look at and say, like, here's where it takes a stance, is with the conduct unbecoming an officer, which is inaccurate in terms of military. We're talking biblically here. Is it biblically true that Dawson should have defended Willie? That statement that Dawson makes, when Downs, he says, "What did we do wrong? We did nothing wrong. What did we do wrong?" And Dawson says, "Yeah, we did do something wrong. We are supposed to protect those who cannot defend themselves. We were supposed to defend Willie." I think that is quite true. That is biblically very accurate. We are supposed to defend those around us, even at personal cost. And for that, I'm going to give it 3.5.
Okay. And I will say, up until that point, Dawson had done that.
Correct. Which is also the great irony
to
of
the
it.
point where, right.
Yeah.
To the point where he had someone who outranked him worried about him kicking his butt.
And also Santiago to some degree betrayed him as well. But
that's true.
But he seemed to understand that Santiago was someone who was trapped. The fact that he had that conviction, I think it's possible that he was acting in terms of revenge a little bit. And that he recognized he was wrong for doing so. And I think in terms of his own personal ethics, any expression thereof. I think that is good Christian morality, good Christian virtue. Dawson represents proper virtue, and for that I give it 3.5.
Okay.
And the only reason why I'm not going to give it any higher is that the movie just doesn't take enough of a stand on anything else to get things right. And that's not a knock on the movie.
Right.
I think movies that get you talking and get you discussing and leave things to be discussed, I think is a good way to go about art.
And if you always take a stand, you end up being ham-fisted, and that's not good either.
Correct. Yeah.
So, okay. Well, thank you for tuning in to episode 7 of Hey, a Movie. We had a wonderful, deep discussion on a movie that Martin and I both love. But I'd like to remind everyone, if you do enjoy this, please subscribe to our channel. We have gone ahead and started posting shorts, so you can see short clips. Mm-hmm. We appreciate you for sharing those. If you think a particular short is good for theological discussion, please use them. And if you like the original,
right, and if you like our shorts, you should see our pants.
It's true. I have much nicer pants than shorts. I also several weeks now, before you're actually seeing this, did actually activate the community, and hopefully we will start posting some of the content we mentioned. Things like Martin's article about playing with action figures. Hopefully I'll be able to share the Papal Bulwark spoof article in there as well. So we'll start I'll be able to show the minutes of the Synod of Trod in there. So we'd love to invite people to be part of a community in that and share what you think. And again,
there's also a lot of good resources on C's website too. The Society of Evangelical
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
We're still getting the website up for air, but I promise it'll be in the cloud soon. But till next time, I'm Chris Bastito.
And I'm Martin Glenn.
Tune in next week when we will be reviewing
There'll be mystery and catastrophe, but it's all in fun. You pay no money, wait and see. Hey, a movie. Is there any way to stop it? Starring everybody. Everybody, yes. Me. Christ by highest heaven